Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to have everyone here on this January 2024 webinar with the Society of Agricultural Communication Scholars. I'm Ricky Telk at the University of Florida. And today we'll have Jamie Grieg from University of Tennessee talking about activities and experiential learning using technology effectively and efficiently. So as is the practice here where there are SACS meetings, is that it's really up to the presenter how he or she would like to field questions, whether during the process or at the very end. And then after, in this case, Jamie, our presenter, has a chance to do his presentation and discussion about, in this case, experiential learning. We'll, after the Q&A, we'll have time for any announcements that anyone around the Zoom meeting has, whether it's about conferences or about things going on at your university. Really a chance for us to kind of share what's happening around the country. With that, Jamie, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you for this rescheduled meeting. Thank you all very much for being able to be flexible today to hear what Jamie has to say to us about technology. Jamie, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So thanks for meeting a week after it was originally scheduled. I was just listing all the things that have happened. So I was supposed to go on vacation the week before my webinar, and I did go on vacation, but my vacation was bookended by a series of unfortunate events. But so 2 cars, one broke down and one that was totaled in a car accident, and a fractured hand later. I am here with a cold, but we're persevering or pushing through. I say there's no time to be sick. So yeah, thanks for joining today. I will launch my presentation in a little bit and go through it. I won't preempt it just by saying that I'm considering how to run this webinar. I didn't want to come across like I have all the answers or here preaching some kind of gospel about using technology in the classroom. So I realized that there's probably people on this call that have been using technology in the classroom way before me. And so the preface of this is my experience. These are some of the things that I have taken away as I have applied different technologies in the classroom, and hopefully that can inspire discussion and is useful to you. But again, there's probably insight within this Zoom room that we can all learn from. So with that, I'm going to share this. Okay, I have 3 desktops, so just making sure everyone can see what's happening. That's the first lesson about technology, is that sometimes you can incorporate too much and then not how to use it all. Okay,
yeah,
so
we're seeing the actual presentation, not the presentation mode, just before you.
Oh, you're seeing that? Okay, let's try it. Try that again.
Yeah, we saw the PowerPoint, but we just didn't see it activated. It was just kind of when you put things in.
I think I know I need to share my 3rd desktop screen. There we go.
That's it.
Okay, so I'm gonna call this Tech Geek 101. So my intro overview of the technology that I've applied in the classroom and things I have learned from it. So what will we cover? So I'm going to talk a little bit about where this began. So I have a journalism background, so I'm a firm believer in storytelling. So we'll do this as a journey story. So I'm going to start right all back at the beginning and then kind of lead you through my process. as I've incorporated technology, the things that I've learned, because I kind of like sequentially builds on itself. So we'll go through 360 video activities, drone activities, virtual reality applications, AI used as a writing tool, and then prompting in AI. And they there's kind of a hodgepodge of different tech here, but a lot of the lessons kind of add on to each other. Lessons I've learned from one piece of technology can be applied to another. So I'm not that old, but I'm going to go back to when I first started thinking about using technology, to give you an idea of where I come from when I'm thinking about it. So just to give you a background about me, I don't come from a traditional ag background. I started out in journalism. So I'm from Scotland and I did my Bachelor's of Arts in Journalism at Robert Gordon University, which is a university near Aberdeen in Scotland. And then I come across to Tennessee to do a master's program in the College of Journalism, sorry, School of Journalism in the College of Communications at the University of Tennessee. And I at first am a like teaching assistant for some writing classes, but kind of relatively quickly their multimedia journalism class expands, and I get assigned a multimedia journalism section to teach, and I kind of teach that through master's and PhD. And one of the things I'm thinking about there is how could I incorporate emergent technology into this classroom so that students can get a hands-on feel for the kinds of things that might be coming down the line if they're to go into video production. And at that time, I'd gone to a couple conferences and at the like demo events, people were showcasing 360 cameras. And so I want to try and think, okay, how do I maybe fit this emergent technology 360 cameras into my classes? And I kind of had this thought that I'm going to go with what I know. Like, I'm going to take this technology and treat it as if it is just a regular camera. And so, what would you know, people can look around in the frame, see what they see, but I can maybe take the basic framework of videography that I know and apply it to the technology and see how it works. And so that's where I started kind of taking this idea of what if I just took the skills that I know, storytelling, narrative storytelling, but apply it to a new kind of technology. So in this instance, we bought some Ricoh Theta 360 cameras. But what I was telling students at the time is we don't have to rewrite the script. Like we know that there's a form of journalism that works, a personal narrative. So we start with the interview. Like the interview is the basis of that. So normally we would film that with a regular camera. So let's go ahead and film these interviews with a 360 camera. So you still have the person standing there. You still have them telling you the story. And then we'll film B-roll with these cameras and do what we would normally do. You know, someone's telling a story about being in a space. Well, we then capture that space and we layer that on top of what they're telling us. And so, yeah, people can look around and people can see what they want to see, but they're still getting the familiar storytelling process that we would normally use. And so, one of the things we do that in that class is we take on a client. So in this instance, there's a local nonprofit called Remote Area Medical, and they are based in Tennessee, but they work internationally, mainly in rural areas. And they'll come in for a weekend. They might take over a conference center or I think they took over a stadium one weekend. And they set up dental chairs, they set up a vision clinic, and then patients come, no insurance needed, and they line up overnight and in the early hours of the morning. They line up for these medical clinics, mainly in rural Appalachia, and then they're seen throughout the day. So then we took the 360 cameras to there, and we did like perspective of the staff that work there, but we also did perspective of the patient. So we would, we picked a person, a subject. In this shot, you see Poppy Green, who's a clinic coordinator. So we interviewed him and then followed him throughout the day with the camera. Like, so you see what he would see as he's talking about it. And we also did that for the patients. So we would film a patient standing outside, waiting in line, and then we'd film them throughout the day talking about what they did, and then take a shot from each room that they went through. So basically, we filmed the experience with them as the narrator. And so this isn't any different from the way I would have directed them to film a documentary about a location. But in this instance, instead of using like a regular video camera, a regular film camera, we take it and we shoot it in 360. Big difference there is in a regular camera, you as a producer, you can direct person's attention to a focal point. So like here, in a normal video, you might be looking at the person and that's all you can look at. I have to look at that person. Well, in 360, I can look to the left, right, behind. That person is still talking, but I'm in 360, the person who's viewing it is really the producer of the shot. They see what they want to see. But I wanted to do our normal process and then see if it worked. And it did. I feel like what we ended up doing kind of taught the students this new technology, but also in a familiar setting because they already understood the concepts that we're applying to it. And so how key things I start to realize with this tech is that I don't need to start from scratch. I don't need to see this technology as I'm starting from ground zero. I need to learn a new way of doing things. I need to learn a new technique. I can say, how do I take what I know already works, a storytelling technique, a way of identifying my story, and how can I apply that to a new technique or a new format? So this kind of starts my journey down like my thought process of how I would apply technology in the classroom. And so fast forward, graduate PhD program, short time as a temporary lecturer in ALEC at UT, and then I get appointed tenure track faculty in January 2020. And throughout the process, I've kind of been refining multimedia journalism, writing for media, and so I haven't got an ag background, but I'm taking these concepts and applying them to agricultural communications. So I start at Herbert College, and then I'm taking on new classes, and one of the classes is, at the time it's called digital media production, like 443, but now it's called video production. I've since simplified it down just to focus on video. And again, I'm wanting to incorporate something new into the course, get students hands-on with something that they may experience later on in their careers. And so this time I decided to bring in drone instruction. And so we get some DJI drones for the class, which have subsequently been banned by the US government. So we just have these DJI drones that cannot be repaired apparently, according to new legislation. But that's just a side note. So drone instruction in ALEC 443. So in the previous slides, when I talked about 360, I mentioned using a client. So that's another thing that I've become kind of a fan of, is having like a real world client that we can work with that gives the students a purpose to work around, to work their learning around. So in 443, I want them to learn how to use drones for aerial photography, but I also want them to it not just to be, oh, we're gonna go out and fly a drone around and like it's like a toy. Like I want it there to be purpose. And so in this class, we work with the turfgrass science department to create promotional videos for their program. So turfgrass science at UT do the field management for soccer, NFL, golf, and so we kind of filmed every stadium that they work in and surface and put together these promotional videos using a combination of regular video that we shot on the ground and aerial photography. Again, this again like treating a tool like it has a specific purpose. Like in this instance, we knew that we had to shoot these large venues, soccer pitches, football stadiums, baseball stadiums. And so it made sense to incorporate that tool because the kind of shots that we needed required it. So again, it was saying to students, it's not just using it for the sake of it, or just learning it because it's cool. We're learning it because it has a real purpose that we couldn't get that shot any other way. And so we teach the students how to fly the drone, but we also teach them how to use the principles of photography, like framing. What shot do you need? How do you get in? How do you get your camera into a location that gets you the shot you need? So we're teaching them all the concepts that they would learn in regular photography, and again applying them to this to drones. And so some things we learned in this class. One was learn from your students. So it's likely that someone in your class, specifically with modern technology, is either as skilled or more skilled than you. Like, so when I took this class, I asked them at first, has anyone used drones? And one of the guys was like a drone pilot. Like he flew drones in like sporting, like a sporting drone. And so immediately I had someone else that could almost co-instruct with me because they were familiar with it. And so having a purpose. So again, I could have entered this and just think this is something that you can learn and you can put it on your CV, or this is just a cool thing that we get to go out and do. We get to go out for a couple of days into the fields and play with flying around. But it was more like the way I framed it took it from just learn this thing to, okay, we're going to teach you about photo and video. You already have skills in that area. That's why you took the prereqs to be in this class. So how can we take those existing skills and apply them to this new technology? So instead of it just being, this is a new thing to learn, see it as this is an extension of your existing skills. This is, you know how to work a handheld camera. We're going to take those principles and apply it to one that flies in the sky. Having a real project to focus the group. So again, I did have a practice site that we went to before we went to the client. We went to this big field research area to get the basics of flying. But having that client project, like we're going to produce promotional videos for this turfgrass department, gave them focus. It was, well, I'm actually going to get something out of this and work with a real client rather than, oh, I'm just going to be in a field flying a drone around and taking pictures of random things that don't really mean anything. Conversely, having the client does create an additional stress. So we had, I had to hand something over at the end of the day to these people, and the students I work with, most of them had never used a drone before. So again, you do put yourself under the pressure of, well, what if they don't learn it? Or what if it just turns out to be really bad? So again, that kind of connects to the next thing is not every student is going to enjoy it or connect with it. And not every student is going to want to learn the technology. They're not going to even, you can reinforce as much as you want how the purpose and having clients and this is adding to their existing skills. Sometimes students just don't like it. And so learning to accept failure and address frustration. So having those one-on-one like moments with students that aren't, you can tell are not in it, and seeing, just reminding them that, okay, this might not be your thing, but I just, if we can get through this together, I promise you, you'll learn something, you'll benefit from it. Um, and also we're working with expensive stuff, so it's kind of important that you don't just not listen at all and crash the thing into a tree. And that was definitely moments with students where they just didn't take it seriously, and we had to refocus them because they had a $700 drone in the air, and if they just stopped paying attention, then it would just crash into something. And then that kind of connects. The last thing is like, this is a hands-on activity. Like when someone's flying a drone with the controls and the screen, it's hard to focus on other people. So if you have like more other students doing other things, I mean, there's times where I just have to stand over someone's shoulder and look at their screen, or even take over the controls if I feel like something's going to go wrong. And so acknowledging that it is a time consuming thing, and that hands-on instruction, especially something like a drone, sometimes requires one-on-one time. So you have to be able to structure your lessons around that. Okay, so I'm going to transition a little bit here, away from some of the specific media classes that I've taught. So in our ones where they're designed around cameras, to other class, the intro to AgCom class, where they get a kind of a taste of a lot of different communication methods. And so in this class, I was trying to incorporate again something new. And so we did two things. One was we used Spatial, which you see in the top left is like a VR gallery. So you can create the gallery on a desktop browser and put whatever you want on the wall. So in this case, we had students do their final media projects. They had to create campaign graphics, and we had them put them on the wall. And then they did their final presentations inside Spatial, which is an app on Oculus Quest headsets. And so the students, this was just coming out of COVID. So we had some students online and some in person. And so they all met in this virtual environment to do their final presentations. And on the right-hand side, this is an app called Wander. And again, it's on Oculus Quest. And it kind of links Google Maps with VR. So it takes the Street View images and puts it into a VR app. So you can go to locations around the world and visit them, and see them in VR. And it has a smartphone app too, where you can take your own like 360 images. So I had students go out and take 360 spheres of campus, upload them to Google Maps Street View, and then we looked at them in class through the Wander app. So I bring this up because this was kind of my first venture into using 360 and VR in a classroom. And I think I think it went well, given that we were doing just other things at the same time. We didn't really had time to focus just on this. But what it did make me start to realize is, if we're going to go into VR, going to adopt it, what is it that I would use it for that can't be achieved in another way? And so these two things were the first apps that started to make me think about that. One was, what would we need a virtual space for that I couldn't just replicate on campus? Like I could create a gallery, I could create a gallery of posters on campus using a conference room. But what does this achieve that I couldn't achieve that way? And so it was really the distance thing, like distance education. I was like, well, I can't bring the students that can't be on campus here and do the gallery. So really the purpose of this is to achieve a form of distance education, simulating something we would do in person, but in a virtual like way. And then again on the right, I started to think about these international experiences and study abroad, and what does it mean for students who can't afford or don't have the time to go and do these trips. And maybe maybe it is. It's not ever going to replace a real world activity, but maybe there's a space for VR to facilitate experiential learning, to create some form of equity among students who don't have the time, don't have the physical capability, don't have the money to go and do it, or aren't interested. And maybe this is a gateway. Doing an initial VR experience might prompt interest in pursuing the real world physical experience. And so that's why I start down this road of like thinking, what is the pathway for this technology? And again, so a couple of things happen in that class. Notice one thing is like brain drain, that the VR experience does, there are physically draining limitations. Also, the headsets themselves just drain. So that was like learning experiences from that. But also, like with anything that we're applying, why? Like, what is it? What am I achieving here that I wouldn't achieve in another way? And so take that forward, this concept, and I have a graduate class. It's online, asynchronous. Um, and I remember when I was in my master's program, PhD program, the most beneficial things to me of that experience were the times where we met in seminars and talked as a group. And I started to think about our online asynchronous graduate program and think, they really don't have that experience. Like you can kind of simulate discussions on a forum. You can kind of sometimes get people on Zoom to talk about things, but that like physical, I'm in a room with somebody in a group, no other distractions, asking questions and talking about a subject is something that you kind of miss in an asynchronous environment. So I'd got a grant from the college to purchase VR headsets, and at that time we had about 7 of them. And my asynchronous class was much larger, but we invited 7 students who were willing to participate in these synchronous sessions. And we said, for everybody else who's not participating, we're going to record them and post the recordings online. But for the 7 who sign up, we're going to FedEx you a headset. And 4 times in the semester, we're going to meet as that group of 7 plus me and an invited guest. And we're going to have a seminar on leadership. We've brought in 2 leaders from industry. They're going to hold the sessions. They were also given headsets and training. And 4 times per semester, we meet in these virtual spaces. So Meta, who's the company that now owns Oculus and the Quest headsets, have their own app called Horizon Workrooms. And so this is like a picture, you can kind of see the graphic presentation of what it looks like, except you'd be in first person inside one of these avatars. So you create an avatar, which FYI doesn't have legs. So that's a weird feature. Meta decided that anything below the waist was going to result in online problems. So Meta don't have below the waists on their avatars. And then you meet in this virtual room. If you see at the back of this picture, there's also a kind of zoom. So there is a zoom feature embedded into it, which means that someone can watch through a browser and join using their webcam. And so we said to the students, if you want to, you can jump on this browser version and be a part of the room. If you're not an avatar, everyone else will record it and put it online. And so I say we're presenting on this at AAAE. I have a couple graduate students who are doing a presentation of some of the qualitative findings from this, the graduate students' perceptions of this experience. Essentially, they really felt engaged. What they said was they forgot while they're in the room that you're an avatar, and it felt as close as they felt to having an in-person experience. They describe being more connected to the content, more connected to each other, more inspired to ask questions. they felt a connection to me that they didn't feel with other online professors, because it felt like they were meeting me at least sometime in the semester as like an in-person experience. Some of the limitations, the technology is limited by internet access. So we had to guarantee that students who were participating had adequate internet access to support browser streaming. The headsets often required to be updated. So students decided to get on the room and they hadn't turned on their headset that day. They might have to wait 10 minutes before it would switch on because it went through an automatic update, making sure the headsets are charged. And then mentioned before about headset fatigue. These were 60-minute sessions. And by the end of the sessions, it was probably just a little bit too long. Students said they were kind of getting like sore heads. And so limiting those sessions is probably something that we would do going forward. Also, we only had 7 students do it. So really, it was just a preliminary pilot study to see how it worked. I'd really like to expand it beyond that and get funding to do it across multiple classes. But the main thing I want to say, just kind of what I've said about previous technology, is I was taking this and trying to work out, okay, how can I either enhance what I'm doing, my existing practices, or how can I do something that I wouldn't be able to achieve otherwise, and using the technology for that. So it's not just I want to use VR because it's the new thing and it's cool to do. I was thinking about it, what is this going to actually add? And in this instance, create an environment that I wouldn't otherwise be able to achieve. And something that I knew in my master's program that I really benefited from. So we're going to pause for a second because there's probably a lot to digest. And we'll stop sharing. So is there any thoughts, questions you have at this point while we pause?
I have a
I'm
question
gonna get
about I have a question about working with clients, so having your students work with a client. I've thought about this with like web design. I haven't tried it yet just because I haven't had a class of my own to do that with yet. I'm close. But I was wondering how did you think through that process? Because I know that you can always prepare a client before the class, or you can have students go out and find clients, which is kind of scary, I feel like. But do you mind explaining that a little bit more, your process?
Yeah, so a couple of things on that. The the people that I've worked with so far in my projects are people that, so I'll give you context. My wife worked for remote area medical at the time. So I had someone that I knew at the organization that wasn't going to be mad at me if it didn't go well. Like I knew that at least I had an advocate that I already had an existing relationship with, who was like, you know what, I know this is kind of an experiment for you, and let's just see how it goes. I think I wouldn't put my students in a position where we were working with someone who wasn't willing for them to have nothing at the end of it. Like, I think, and again, even the turf grass science department, when I asked them about it, I said, I don't know if at the end of the semester they're going to produce something that you're going to like. And so they were in on it also because they're at the university. They understand part of the purpose is education, and so they're willing for them to kind of trial it out and see if it worked. Whereas I can imagine if I was in a position where someone had come to us and really needed like a video, for example, a promotional package, and they needed it to be public facing and they needed it by a certain date, like I wouldn't be comfortable putting students in that position because I think, and also risk burning a bridge with somebody by setting an expectation that might not be realistic.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else at this stage? Okay, music might being comfortable with silence technique for long enough. We'll move on. Then okay, so let's go back to share screen. What's this? Okay, so we talked about 360 video, using some 360 cameras, drones, incorporating VR into classes. So I'm going to finish this up talking about AI, and I put that in air quotes because I think the things that I've used in AI, I've used in a couple ways. One of them definitely, if you were to ask someone, is this AI, people would say yes. But other, I'm not sure people would automatically identify it as being AI, even though it is technically. So I guess we'll talk about this. In the ecosystem of artificial intelligence, there is a lot. I think I saw a graphic the other day about startups in AI, and it's kind of like that graphic you see about pharmaceutical companies and how many of them are out there and how many of them are owned by Nestle. The Within the realm of AI, there's thousands and thousands of apps, but probably the most familiar people are going to be is with OpenAI or ChatGPT. And so that's kind of where people go to when they're thinking about AI, specifically within academia, the one people most often talk about. And so how that frames the conversation is people think of AI as, I would say, like a content creator. Like people, like that's really what a lot of people have in their head when they talk about AI is something you give a prompt and then that AI will do the thing for you. It could be write this block of text, or it could be create this graphic, or it could be create this code. Essentially, we're going to tell it to do something and then the AI is going to do it. But there's also a whole host of AI out there that we've probably been using for a while that is kind of runs more in the background. And so something like Grammarly. Like Grammarly is artificial intelligence. It's a computer program that's programmed to identify through an algorithm language, and it responds with prompts. It will highlight words, it will give you suggestions, it will analyze text. So we've actually been working with artificial intelligence software for a while. OpenAI just kind of, again, opened the door to this newer version that people are more familiar with. And so what I'm going to talk about how I use AI is kind of more subtle. The program that we've been using, well, I also start off with ChatGPT. So I actually asked ChatGPT, so what are the benefits of students using AI tools for college writing classes, and how can they use them ethically? Give me a short statement for each response. Your response will be read by faculty, university faculty during a webinar on technology-based teaching. And it started to spit me out and a response, and I said, too long, your response needs to fit on one slide. And so here's what it gave me. So benefits of using AI in college writing, enhances research, speeds up research, offers grammar and style suggestions, can be a creative aid, can give personalized feedback, can be an efficient time management tool, help manage writing tasks. It could help to avoid plagiarism. If you cite it, it can be transparent if you disclose it. It can allow you to engage critically if AI is the starting point, not the final product. If you balance AI with traditional learning, i.e. develop personal writing skills alongside AI use, and then if you respect intellectual property, using it ethically and legally. So then I said, But what if student chooses to use AI inappropriately, does not disclose use, does not learn or enhance their own skills, and comes to rely on AI to create work? And so then it told me about the possible sanctions for AI academic dishonesty, that they will underdevelop skills, loss of personal achievement, that there's ethical implications, and it could impact their future career because they don't develop their own skills and they rely on AI. But I am telling you right now that blank is not real. If you know the airplane lady. ChatGPT is not a real person. It's a language model. It's forced to give a response based on what it knows is within its database. It's essentially an algorithm that's just feeding back a response based on my prompt. And so I think that is one thing to note, is that until we get to a point where we have like sentience within AI, you're still just talking to an algorithm, and that algorithm's really essentially just telling you what it is forced to respond to within its limits. So that's why you can tell with AI response because they're kind of formulaic. See here, like everything that it gave me back was listed, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It often does that, kind of forces itself into a list process. It also has these weird language quirks where it speaks with like really like it speaks in superlatives. I'll ask it to describe research and it will describe everything as the most important, significant piece of research that you've ever read. So it has these kind of weird quirks. I'm just giving that prompt because when I decided to incorporate AI into writing class, I kind of moved away from ChatGPT because I knew of kind of these faults, and chose a program called Packback, which I said before that people may not initially think of as AI because it's really doing a lot of things that Grammarly does, but it's not a content creator. You can't tell it to write something and it write it. What Packback is a writing aid that as you are writing, it gives you feedback on your writing. It won't edit your writing for you, it won't create writing for you, but it gives you these like feedback prompts. And so I incorporate Packback, have incorporated it, and probably will again into my 440 writing class. And how it works is you create a prompt for the student. So this is like the assignment details, where they're asked what they're asked to do and what they're asked to answer. Every writing assignment is called a deep dive. On the right, they'll be provided a rubric, which is pre-programmed into the AI. So you set points for word count and depth, grammar and mechanics, flow and structure, content, and then content and ideas is actually a manual grading. So the AI analyzes what you've written in your prompt, and then it provides feedback to the student to let them know whether or not they've satisfied everything in the prompt and whether they've satisfied the requirements. And then when you get the grading report to you, everything, it shows up, you can edit it, you don't have to go with the points allocated. It'll give you the AI's suggested points plus content and ideas is your own rubric that you manually grade. And so here's an example here of the deep dive in when you're inside it. So you see that prompt, then you go to create a draft and you get this, which you create your draft on the left-hand side, and on the right, as you're writing, Packback is giving prompts. So I put in an example draft, and it starts telling me your biggest opportunity to improve are research and citations and grammar and mechanics. And then I would click on view current suggestions. It would take me into research and citations. It'll start highlighting areas where I've put quotes or areas where I maybe haven't included any additional citations, and it'll prompt me to identify a citation. Now, when I bring that into my sources or my works cited section, it kind of grades the source. Is it from a credible authority? It'll provide you with the in-text and the reference citation in whatever format you choose, APA or Chicago or whatever. And then additionally, it'll do things like flow and structure, grammar and mechanics. It'll highlight things. So I'll go kind of deeper into here. So just an example of the feedback. So in flow and structure, something is that your paragraphs are short. View highlights, it will highlight areas where you can add additional detail. It gives this score for how hard your writing is to read, so you can see readability feedback. And then it also gives you things you did well. So your writing flows well, your sentence is a good balance of simple and complex. In terms of grammar and mechanics, again, this is essentially just grammarly. It'll pinpoint, cause them highlights, grammatical errors, and provides the correct version. And then also does things like gives you praise if you use active voice as opposed to passive voice. If you want to learn more about PACBAC, at the National Agricultural Communication Symposium on Sunday, February 4th, I have 2 professional development sessions. One is on this, using online writing and discussion boards through PACBAC, and then at back-to-back follow that up with how to enhance engagement and presentation skills through virtual reality workroom applications, what I talked about in the graduate thing. So lessons learned for using the PACBAC AI or AI in writing. One is students reported at the end of the semester that it did improve their writing. One thing is, for students who may normally have just written a draft and submitted it without rechecking it, just having those prompts from the AI made them recheck their writing. It also, what they said, allowed them to write naturally. So they would just write what they were thinking, what was in their head, and then not worry about grammar or formatting, and then go back and check it once they had their AI. So that allowed them to get the idea out onto paper and not worry about, because a lot of students in writing get hung up about the writing being good at first instance, as opposed to just getting the idea down and then editing from then on. So it's almost like the AI served the role of an editor that they could rely on once they had something down in writing. There is kind of negative though, that students learn to game the system. So because it's points-based allocated, there's another version of PACBAC that's for discussion boards. It's even worse than that. They can learn how to format and present the information to get points, but PACBAC doesn't verify or analyze the accuracy of the content. So for example, if you make a statement, PACBAC doesn't know if that statement is true or false. All it knows is that it looks like a correct sentence. If you put a citation, PACBAC doesn't know if that citation is relevant to what you're talking about. It just knows if that citation is from an accurate and relevant source. And so for all those things, I mean, the next generation of AI in PACBAC is probably going to be more active on those things, being able to search the internet for the information we're writing about. But that still relies on the instructor to go through and make sure what they're talking about is actually accurate and relevant to the topic. And the last thing was, like I was talking about before, for students, when I tell them they're using an AI-based tool and they use this, like this is not ChatGPT. So if they're used to a tool where you just tell it to do something and it creates it for you, this is not going to feel like that. And so it kind of feels more like Grammarly with some additional features. So again, to some people, they might think, well, this isn't AI. and maybe that's just the semantics of that argument. There's not a point getting down that road, but it just speaks to this idea of what is artificial intelligence, and do people realize what they're using is actually AI, even if it may be a little bit more subtle than ChatGPT. And so then just to finish this up, I'm going to return to, I'll use ChatGPT again as an example, but there's thousands of applications out there that do what ChatGPT does in a different way. Essentially, they respond to prompts, some kind of algorithm program that responds to what you do. So what I see these programs are, it's as idea generators, that they shouldn't, maybe idea generator is the wrong word. There are ways of going from something that's in your head to having a completed product that aids you on the way. And so you might have seen articles about this, that in this age of AI, what people are going to want to learn is how to prompt. So what is it that I need? How do I learn to become someone that can take an idea and actualize that idea in a creative project using an AI tool? And a lot of that comes down to is asking the right question. A prompt is just a question that you ask. And so one thing we teach students is to become investigators in terms of coming up with the right questions. So some things I use to teach people is like how to craft a prompt. So you need to be clear and precise in what you're asking. You need to set context and provide background information, because often the tool you're using is limited by the data that's fed into it. Unless you give it additional context and data, it's not going to know what to do. Include specific instructions or guidelines. Incorporate what you want, so you can tell it exactly this is what the output I want and desire. And then if you can foresee that your prompt might cause an error or give you something that you don't want, you can anticipate those steps and address them in the prompt. So example here of some best practices. So if you give the AI a role, they're often very good at doing this. So example here, this is in a business context, but you ask it to imagine itself as something. So imagine you're a business development expert in supply chain with experience in this field. So now it sets the context. I want you to draft a message or an email that should be informative, include a valid use case, offer a clear call to action. Be specific. So I would like you to invite X to discuss Y, and we need to convey the following things. Add conditions. So you must select the right use case. You can say you must include an example. You must include in this thing email or LinkedIn messages and a list. And then if it doesn't have enough input data, you can provide that. So give your company name or the names of individuals, client descriptions, etc. So we're taking essentially things that might be scrambled in our head. We know we have to have all these components, and creating a prompt that gets that idea from our head through this tool into something that might more closely resemble our output. Obviously, at the end of that, you have to be the person that revises that. But I think this was talked before in the AI thing. A lot of these tools, what we're doing is we're getting through those obstacles that we as creatives often find ourselves in. Like, I couldn't even begin starting this because I have to create a framework. Like, I couldn't even begin starting this because it's going to take me so much time even to create like an outline of what I'm going to do. And so I think my suggestion for students is to use creative AI in a way to get you from point A to point B, where right in between that there might be some kind of obstacle or burden that you might otherwise have just set that task aside and said, I can't be bothered doing that right now. When I have the energy to create a framework, I'm gonna do it. Well, this kind of gets you through that creative block. And I just leave this at the end with I just saying, how do I summarize this today? So like from pencils to cameras to computer graphics to AI, tools are designed to help the creator shape their creativity, not the other way around. And so that's kind of the way I think about it when I apply any technology in the classroom, that I'm not letting the tool guide what I do. And it's not centered around the tool. Every lesson or idea or project is centered around what I want to achieve and my goals. And then say, okay, how can those tools help me achieve this or help students achieve this? And in that process, we're going to learn about the tool, but it's not at the center of everything. And so essentially it all begins with you. You are the person that's going to wield this tool. Your students are the people that are going to wield these tools. And so you or your students should be at the center of that process, helping learn the tool for a specific purpose, not just learn the tool because you feel like it's somehow you have to learn it. So that is my takeaways. End the show.
Jamie, thank you very much. We are close to time. I'm going to ask this. I'm going to just do a quick promo for next month's, and then after that, if you'd like to stay on, I will keep the Zoom meeting open for questions or comments if you have something specific you'd like to share with Jamie. So next month's meeting will be on February the 26th. Kiso Settled from Oklahoma State will lead a panel discussion on a topic that is near and dear to everyone's heart, things that get your manuscript rejected. So he'll have a panel of current and former editors of journals. And so some of the things that they see common to getting a manuscript not accepted. How about that for being correct? Not accepted as opposed to rejected. That's a much nicer way of saying things. So that'll be coming up next month. For those of you who will be attending the National Agricultural Communications Symposium in Atlanta next week, just something to kind of keep in mind. We have, as of right now, 105 people registered for just our NACS section next week. We've never broken 100. So, and 54 or so of those are graduate students. So that is tremendous. So looking forward to seeing many of you here in the flesh next week in Atlanta. Again, thank you all for joining us today. And like I said, if you'd like to stay on to talk with Jamie, if you have any questions, but if not, it is 4 o'clock. Thank you all very much and hope to see you next month as well as next week. Thanks.